Welcome and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I want to share two disturbing stories about domestic violence victims who were saved from bad situations. One saved herself during a freeway attack, and one was saved by a Michigan prosecutor who suspected something wasn't right during a court hearing on Zoom. On March 2nd of 2021, a preliminary hearing was held via Zoom from Judge Jeffrey Middleton's courtroom in Sturgis, Michigan, that involved a domestic assault incident that occurred on February 9th between Kobe Harris and Mary Lindsay, who were dating at the time. 21-year-old Kobe Harris is accused of assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder, an attack comparable to strangulation. And if he's convicted, it carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison, a $5,000 fine, or both. During the Zoom hearing, both Harris and his victim, Mary Lindsay, made appearances, each connecting to the hearing from their own device. When the prosecutor began questioning Mary about the incident, Mary wasn't very forthcoming with the events that led up to the charges against her boyfriend, and it appeared to make the prosecutor really pay attention. A few minutes into the hearing, the prosecutor interrupted the hearing and told the judge that she had reason to believe the defendant was in the same apartment as the witness, or the abuser in the same apartment as his victim, because she said Mary kept looking off to the side and Harris kept moving around. She told the judge she was extremely scared for Mary's safety, and she wanted confirmation that Mary was safe before they continued. So, as Harris shook his head no, the judge asked Mary where she was. She answered that she was at a house. The judge asked her what the address is where she was, and she responded that she was at her home, as she again turned to look off to the side. The judge asked her a second time what the address is where she was, and she answered with her home address. As the judge questioned Mary, who kept looking off to the side, as if to signal to the court that she was in trouble, you see the police officer on the Zoom call pick up his phone and talk on it. Then the judge asked Harris what the address is where he was, and he provided a separate address. So the judge called him out on it. He asked Harris if he was on a laptop or a phone, and when Harris told him he was on his phone, the judge told him he wanted him to go out to the front of the house and show the court the house number on the house. Harris asked the judge why, and said that his phone was ready to die and he had it plugged into the charger, so he couldn't. Then the prosecutor immediately jumped in and told the judge that the police were knocking at Mary's door right then and there. So the judge asked Mary to go answer her door, as Harris sat straight-faced on his camera, acting like nothing was affecting him. After Mary answered her door, her camera went black, and Harris is seen getting up and walking away until his camera goes black also. Then the judge, prosecutor, defense, and police officer on the Zoom call all wait to hear if police found Harris in Mary's house or not. And just as the judge asks the officer to call to see if he can get an update, Harris reappears on the Zoom call with police behind him, telling the judge that both he and Mary want his charges dropped, and that he knew the police were there, and he was sorry he lied to the court. The judge advised him to stop talking, and that the hearing was already adjourned. He told him he is now facing a $10 million bond, so he won't be bonding out of jail, and he may also be facing obstruction of justice charges. The judge said that he may have wanted the charges against him dropped, but Mary didn't want them dropped, and he was just as serious as a heart attack. The judge said it was the first time he ever saw somebody sitting in the next room, potentially intimidating a witness. Then he directed the officers at the home to take Harris into custody on a bond violation, and advised Mary that the court would be in touch to reschedule a date for the hearing. The judge commended the police for acting quickly to get to Mary's house to make sure she was safe, but He did not make mention of the prosecutor on the case, who picked up on Mary's signals in the first place and alerted the court that there was a potential problem. Who knows? She may have saved Mary's life that day. I give her tons of credit for noticing that something was off with Mary's behavior and for paying close enough attention to catch what was happening. She could have easily dismissed the signs, but she chose to speak up instead, and it made all the difference. I will link to the video in my description box if you want to watch it. If you watch the prosecutor closely, you can see her facial expressions as she starts to suspect something is wrong. What a smart cookie. Now, on to the next story that is absolutely terrifying. It was first reported on Christmas Eve 2020 as an off-duty Detroit police officer who was shot at on the freeway. The story was reported as an attack where her car was fired upon and she returned fire and injured her attacker, but not much more information was ever given. Then, an article came out on DeadlineDetroit.com on March 7th, along with other news reports that finally gave the horrific details about what really happened to that officer that Christmas Eve morning. According to news reports, 24-year-old Jacqueline Jones had only been out of the police academy for 1 month when she found herself in a terrifying situation on a Detroit freeway where she would need to fight like hell for her life. And she did. Reports read that shortly after midnight, Jones was driving in southwest Detroit when her car was rammed in the rear end by a black truck. The truck reportedly began ramming her car repeatedly, forcing her off a service drive alongside the freeway, over the embankment, and on to I-75. Then the truck chased her and pinned her car against a concrete construction wall on the freeway. Once she was trapped between the truck and the wall, her attacker got out of his truck and fired 6 shots through her windshield. Her attacker was her ex-boyfriend and father of her child, a 34-year-old Detroit firefighter who went unnamed in any news reports I read. According to reports, Jones broke up with her attacker 10 months prior after he was arrested for beating her and holding her at gunpoint. Jones was grazed by one of the bullets he fired through her windshield, but she was able to return fire and shot 17 shots, severely injuring her attacker. She was able to escape her vehicle and run for help, and she and her attacker were rushed to a local hospital where she was expected to make a full recovery, and her attacker later died from his injuries. Jones told police that she fired at her attacker until she emptied her magazine, and during their investigation, they found rope and window breakers and handcuffs in her attacker's truck. Lord knows what plans he had for her if he didn't kill her at the scene, but thank God she was able to defend herself from his attack. It must have been completely terrifying to be run off the road like that, out of the blue, and then pinned against a freeway wall and fired upon. She had an angel with her that night to be able to escape all that with just a graze from a bullet. And thank God she did. Thank God both women in these stories were able to walk away from their dangerous situations safely. If you're interested in learning more about the rise in domestic violence cases since the beginning of the pandemic, I will include another link in my description box where you can get some really helpful information if you're interested. I encourage you to check it out. Thank you all so very much for watching. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on my next video.